Well, welcome everybody. This is the Honeywell Virtual Technology Week, and in particular, this session is operational sustainability and the need for digital transformation. My name is Deborah Leroyd. I am an offerings leader within the Honeywell Connected Enterprise. I look after the Connected Operations portfolio, which is a number of software solutions for connecting to large complex buildings and transforming the way they operate to make them safer, more secure, and more sustainable. In the session today, we're going to talk about digital transformation and how digital transformation is touching all areas of our business, fundamentally changing how we interact with our customers, interact with our employees, how we create value for our customers, and how we can do this with lowering the costs that it has taken previously. And this is all enabled by digital tools and digital technology. But more importantly, it's a cultural change in our organizations to think first about how can we digitally enable our customers and our employees. And it's about challenging the status quo of how we bring our products and services to market. Now, this cultural change is very interesting, particularly in the context of what we've all been experiencing globally in the last couple of months. If you think about how many of our organizations would have reacted 6 months ago if we'd said, suddenly everyone is going to be working remotely. They would have said, it's impossible, it's not viable, we won't get any work done. But yet we've all had to adapt due to the challenging global circumstances around the COVID-19 crisis. So this is a very interesting experiment that we're living through right now, which is pushing us towards the need for digital transformation. I'm joined in this session by 3 other guests who I'm going to introduce right now, and they will each have a few minutes to share some ideas with you about what digital transformation means to them, how they might have implemented that in their own organizations, and then we're going to move on to a more interactive discussion. Firstly, we are extremely honoured to have Dr. Mansoor Alawar from the Chancellor of the Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University in Dubai. Thank you very much for joining us. Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University is the first accredited smart learning institution in the Arab world. This university has the potential to bring about a paradigm shift in education in all parts of the world as part of the emerging quest to create knowledge-based, prosperous societies. So welcome and thank you for joining us, Dr. Mansoor.
Thank you.
From Cisco, we have Chris Bottiga from Cisco's Workplace Experience Strategy. Chris is responsible for defining Cisco's strategy to drive workplace experiences and improve employee engagement in order to promote agile teams and talent retention. For example, using Cisco WebEx room systems and Cisco networking technology to drive user behavior for maintaining employee well-being and safety while optimizing energy consumption and sustainability. From Honeywell, we have our own George Dimitri, Vice President and General Manager of the META region, Middle East, Turkey and Africa, for Honeywell Building Technologies. Honeywell Building Technologies delivers technology across all aspects of managing buildings and smart cities to make sure that they remain safe, secure and comfortable. With a presence in the Middle East region for over 60 years, Honeywell Building Technologies solutions are found across the region's leading airports, shopping malls, healthcare facilities, hotels, smart city projects and many more. So I'm going to start with you, George, to let us hear your thoughts and set a bit of the context for how you see digital transformation happening in your business and your region.
Thank you, Deborah, and it's a pleasure being here on this panel. I appreciate the presence of Dr. Mansoor. Thank you for being with us, as well as Chris. And I just want to share a few highlights. You talked, Deborah, earlier around the change that occurred in the past 6 months, and this has been quite transformational across the world, and certainly impacted how we live, how we operate, and really took us to a different level. So as we think at Honeywell in the building space, we look at three key areas around digitalization and how this has been expedited with the experience that we're facing today, working from home and getting ready to return to work. And as we look at the buildings, it's a space that brings together a number of people, be it an airport, a hospital, an educational facility, or any other facility, a mall, so on and so forth. Wherever you're going to have a number of people coming together, you need to make sure nowadays that not only you leverage the technology, but you also try to make it smart and enable it to drive efficiencies and cost optimization. So we see three different areas. We look at OpEx optimization, which is pretty important, especially nowadays with the slowing down of the global economy and some economies across the world. This could be an essential aspect of how do you actually go back to office and make sure you're optimizing your cost. And leveraging various softwares, but also solutions, looking at the portfolio of your building and how you operate and where do you spend the money. You basically would enable anything up to 25% savings in your operation from an OpEx perspective. Now, you need to couple that with improved experience. You can't just look at the OpEx optimization. You need to make sure that the users of any building are actually having a positive experience. And the users could be the visitors, could be the occupant of the building, but also it could be the operators that make sure that the building is working in a seamless manner. So as we look at that part of the experience, there is now a lot of pivots into having the experience walk for each of the users and ensuring that each of the users is having a smooth as well as healthy and safe environment for them to operate into. And with that, with the healthy buildings offering that we're putting together is exactly to address the ability to return to work for all these users. Now, third pillar is business continuity, and as you want to make sure that your business is not impacted because physically you're not there, there's two aspects to it. The buildings are becoming smarter, and accordingly, you need to make sure that you leverage the AI and the monitoring and the measurements to be able to not only see the building, but also manage the building from a distance and ensure that there's a quick reaction that would enable you either to improve the experience of the users or even to enhance your cost optimization. So if you bring them all together, it's quite an offering that enables really a major transformation of the buildings, not only to be digital, but also to be healthy. And from a timing perspective and what we faced in the last few months, it is important that we do it now. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, George. I'd like to pass over to Dr. Mansour now for some insights on what has been happening at Hamdan University, what innovative ideas have come out of this crisis, and what your vision is for building the smart university.
Thank you, Deborah, and I'm very honored to be a part of this panel today. And I'd just like to share some of my ideas about the university, first of all, before I get into the building and the digital transformation in action for the HBMSU building. I would say that the idea itself of smart learning in this geography of the world, but in itself an innovative idea to be able to use the power of intelligence in terms of the education. And I think the component that we had here was an innovative idea, plus it was a disruption in terms of the higher education system in education, and a transformation actually. We started in 2002, and at that time there were even no licensing procedure for licensing such an higher education institution, which will be online and using the power of the technology. So I think we came a long way over there, and in order for us to be able to sustain such kind of a disruption that we have created and to transform really into a well-established organization, we were abide with our core 5 values. The first was learner-centric, because we do care about our customers. And second is we are a game changer. We had that particular vision to being a game changer in higher education, and that is very, very important in the geography where we do belong. And the third one was together we grow, because that is where our partnership with Honeywell came into existence, because we are a university, by the way, that we do promote. We are graduating entrepreneurs rather than we graduate job seekers. And I think from that particular aspect, our partnership thrived with Honeywell and other companies around the world. The fourth was passionate for results, because at the end of the day, no matter how nice presentation you make, but at the end of the day, numbers count. So I think that was one of our key values. And the last, not the least, was the fueling innovation. And I think this is where we do come and with Honeywell and try to reduce the energy of consumption, carbon footprint, and operating cost across. And it's a smart campus. That was the real challenge. And a solution could work with existing third-party systems to avoid an upfront capital expense. Those are the sort of challenges. And a patented machine learning solution that analyzes real-time occupancy and weather and data, calculates optimal HVAC settings, and autonomously perform adjustments to reduce energy costs without impact on, of course, our customers, our learners. And really, it was an impact was measured. The energy savings is almost 10%. The comfort complaints about our customers were 0. And the solution also discovered local control issues with the chiller, plan, and fresh air handling unit. So altogether, Deborah, that is where we do belong. And I think one last note, I think from the geography that we are in, I think we might kind of construct maybe a statue for Corona and COVID-19, because I think the whole region being shook up in terms of the education, where so many places were disabled from continuing education, but not United Arab Emirates and our country here in this geography, because the infrastructure was ready made for the whole education system, whether it's general or postgraduate, higher education. They were in action from day number 1. So I think that sort of digital transformation that Dubai holds, it's its vision. I think it's sustained during the COVID-19 era. And not only just to be able to do that, but even HBMSU, as this university, handed out and reached out to those individuals and organizations and teachers around the world to be able to not to leave them behind the education during the COVID-19 era. So we had freely distributed the crash courses on how to be able to become an online teacher in 24 hours, and how to design a course in 24 hours in 5 languages: Arabic, English, French, Spanish, as well as Russian. So we had, during this crisis, our digital transformation actually was in action to be able to educate more than 300,000 teachers around the world and also college professors. So I think I think that is, in a nutshell, what HBMSU stands for. Thank you.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for those examples, Dr. Mansour, and I hope we'll get a chance to ask you some more detailed questions in a little bit later in the session, but very interesting to hear what the university is doing. I'm going to pass it over to Chris now from Cisco. And Chris, can you give us some examples of how you see this digital transformation happening in your industry and in your organization?
Yes, absolutely. And again, honored to be here as well with the other members of the panel. Again, just at a high level, for those that don't know what Cisco does from a high level, we're really in the networking, security, collaboration, and IoT applications business. And we have had a lot of focus on smart cities over the years, and then specifically now over the last year or two into smart buildings. And it really ties into what George says, those three tenets. The first one really being about how do you improve the experience, and then how do you tie it into currently what's actually going on with with COVID-19. So from an experience perspective, the first piece is the ability to be, in essence, the human-machine interface into the building. So, for example, with our WebEx room systems, our devices, they have AI in them, and they can actually see how many people are in the room, for example, and then adjust the amount of air quality and air flow going into that room. Likewise, and a little bit touching on there what Dr. Mansour said, is also the ability to adapt to those users' individual preferences, and then to apply AI to that, to then learn and to then be able to optimize the building based on what the history has been and what it's predicted to be as well. And a lot of that can be tied into scheduling as well, if you know there's a schedule, but you can also learn from it. So a good example in our offices, typically Monday morning is much busier than any other day because all of the salespeople that are normally at home all come in for their team meetings. So the building can learn that and then adjust and actually adjust to it. And what we've done for things like the COVID-19 is to use the people count that we have inside of our systems to then drive user behavior. So if there are too many people in a specific room or a specific area, the system itself will then show a message and will then announce to the users also, hey, you're in a space that you're going beyond what our current recommendations are. Please move to another space, and they can show on the screen the other spaces that would be available to them. Likewise, if the building isn't controlled optimally in all areas, and often sometimes building owners will not necessarily put control in every single space, then the systems can measure that and do the same thing. So if the carbon dioxide or VOCs get out of what's deemed to be safe, it can react there real time and then pass all that information onto the BMS system, which if it can't react to change it, then the system, the WebEx room systems will then advise the users to actually leave there. So there's this great sort of human-machine interface into the building, and then the building can react based on what's actually going on. The other side of that is really, and that's really that automation piece. From an optimization perspective, if I know how many people are in a common area, and in the common areas we also do people count, and we actually do that through the network. So the network itself can ascertain the people that are in a certain area, and again feed that information back to then drive that automation and optimization into the building itself. But then also from a security perspective, there are things like what happens if there is an incident or there's a fire or whatever. Those same room systems can then be used to intelligently tell people where to evacuate to. We actually did this with Honeywell technology. We actually demonstrated with regards to showing when there's a fire, somebody fits a fire. And the system will use in every single room where to evacuate to, which is one way more intelligent than you would typically get, where you just hear the sirens and then have to move out. So from the user experience all the way down to then is like the OT and IT coming together, and then using the network as being able to get that sensor information, get that beacon information. And we're announcing something very special on Friday, which I wasn't allowed to talk about today with regards to what we're going to do with BLE on that. But some very things that then give you back that information where we can see it, we can react to it, but we can also extend it to partners like a building management system to then be able to adapt to that as well. So that's really in the core, all the different elements of how they pertain. And I think they line up in terms of that business continuity, which is probably that last piece in there, George, that you talked about. It's a case of, when the building does have to be shut down, as it is here where I am, they're still all shut down. How can we continue business, and how can we securely connect to the building to then make sure that the building can dampen down as well, but that we have that secure connection? So obviously for Cisco, everything is about security, whether it's connecting people or it's connecting things or it's connecting the buildings.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. That sounds very interesting. And certainly at Honeywell, we've already been working closely with Cisco on exactly those sorts of scenarios where there's the ability to integrate data from the WebEx systems into the building management systems. And that's a good segue to some of the comments I'd like to make from what I see in the way that Honeywell customers are dealing with this digital transformation aspect. We've been helping customers for many years manage their buildings, but most customers really look at that from the point of view of a single building at a time. And so they have a building management system, they have contractors who are being used to run their buildings, but they can't leverage any economies of scale to really get the most out of their investment in their physical infrastructure. So one of the things we're doing is really looking at how digital transformation can enable you to that would mean connecting all your buildings together and information and normalized information from across your building so that you can compare and contrast. So what this enables people to do is to really get a much better idea of what's going on and make optimization decisions. So let me talk about it in slightly more detail. First thing is to connect your buildings so that you have the data flowing from each individual building, despite the fact that they might have lots of different types of systems or technology within those buildings. The second thing you need to do is to visualize that data. So be able to present that data in a consistent and normalized way. And just by doing that, that's just like the most basic, you already will be able to see opportunities to optimize how you run your buildings. And I think Dr. Mansour actually just gave us an example of that, where he said that, the energy optimization project that Honeywell did with the university already uncovered some sort of underlying faults in the building that may not have been apparent without having that sort of visualization of how the building is performing. So once you've connected those buildings together and normalized that data, then you can start to really drive different business decisions. So addressing any obvious and immediate problems that the visualizations will show you. And then secondly, optimizing and transforming. And this can be as ambitious as you want. For example, we've seen customers, particularly during the COVID-19 crisis, questioning, well, why do I need to have lots of staff in every single building who are there to maintain the building? Why can't I if I can run those buildings remotely, which I can, I don't need to have staff everywhere. I can start to cross-skill my team, and I can use my security manager to be looking after the site that he's based in and potentially another site. And similarly, my building manager can be looking at the site, multiple sites. So they're really starting to transform the way they operate based on the ability that the digital transformation technology gives them to control and monitor what's going on across a wide range of building portfolio. So these, I guess, are just some examples of how lots of commercially available technology, not just in buildings, but pretty much in every walk of life. We've heard about the Internet of Things and how that's facilitating all this data coming up into systems that can be used to visualize and optimize and develop machine learning algorithms that will identify opportunities for improvement, for OPEX reduction, for other ways to increase services and increase the experience of your occupants in the case of a building, or your customers in the case of many other industries. So what I'm going to do now is really open the forum up for questions from anyone who is listening. So feel free to start typing your questions into the chat area on your screen. I'm going to start a couple of questions while people are getting their thoughts together and putting their questions in. And we will have a much more interactive session for the second half of the hour here. But I'm going to start with you, Dr. Mansour. I wanted to go back to what you said about some of the kind of the key 5 principles that you have in your university, if I got them correctly: learning-centric, being a game changer, growth and entrepreneurialism, being passionate and being innovative. And I'd like you to make a comment about what best practices do you think that your organization could share with other organizations, similar organizations, about what have you learnt in the last 6 months as we've navigated this COVID-19 crisis about being prepared for this digital transformation journey? What best practices would you like to share?
One of the best practices I think we've gone through was actually smart technology adoption for our building, and that actually gave us an opportunity to be able to immediately shift the whole work system remotely without having kind of a dilemma into thinking what to be done before. And I think not only that, but also our engineers at the university were able to monitor every single thing remotely while the building was intact during our absence for maybe more than 8 weeks. So I think it's that experience itself, it gives an opportunity actually that how we manage energy across the HBMSU portfolio. So and in particular, building engineers can be empowered, I would say, to take a more targeted, data-driven approach to their work while automation improves their productivity. I think that was a major key, and this delivers substantial cost savings actually, and while helping HBMSU achieve carbon reduction targets with relatively low capital investments. So I think the smart building project shows that while various adoption barriers remain, most importantly, the underlying technologies are now more widely available and easier to be implemented. The potential for information technology to improve building energy efficiency is huge. And I think when I'm saying huge, it reaches currently at almost at 25 to 30%. And I think that not just only the energy level, but also the way that under which we provide our operational processes. Because you see, is this technology, this particular partnership with Honeywell enabled us actually to look into the capital investments in terms of the individuals and companies and outsourcing reduced considerably, because it's the same as cloud computing. The cloud computing actually reduced, tremendously the cost on companies when they're using the cloud, because they pay as the amount they use per usage. So I think that particular technology infrastructure, and that's our building project, actually gave us that particular upper hand in terms of controlling costs and at the same time saving energy.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great example. I'm going to move to you, Chris. Cisco's been enabling us all to work smarter and remotely for some time. Have you seen things really change in the last few months? And do you think organizations are now convinced that people can work remotely, or that a remote workforce is as effective as a co-located workforce? Or what do you think needs to happen to make it as effective as a co-located workforce?
So a great question. It's obviously the hottest topic because it was forced upon everybody. I think you're going to find a mix. So you're going to find a mix where companies say, yeah, that worked really well. And you're going to find there's a lot of reports that are coming out where the flip side of that is the actual employees say, yeah, my company gave me everything. They gave me a laptop. They gave me all the technology in order to be able to work. And boy, did it suck. Did I have a poor experience? Did I feel disconnected from my organization? And did I suffer from what we call HOLS, hunched over laptop syndrome? That's there because many people may not use video. They may just be audio, but they're not using video. You're on a tiny little screen, doing that most of the time. So I think what happens is when you're looking to, from a workplace transformation perspective, you in order to drive engagement, people engagement, you need to have a great experience. If you don't have a great experience, then you're not going to be able to drive that engagement. You're not going to get those agile teams and everything else going on. So I think what you're going to see is that some will say, yes, it worked well, but also think, just go back before this and look at Silicon Valley, for example. How do all of those technology companies compete? They compete on spas, on gyms, on haircuts, on massage, on the greatest chefs in the world providing food. They want you to be in the office at least 18 hours a day if you can, and they'll provide you everything for that. And you can't just forget that. That was a reason why those people came in there. Also look at the dynamics of where people live. A lot of young people in particular live in the city. So they live in very small places and they go to work as being there, get out of there. What we've seen a lot of is people huddled underneath their staircases, specifically the young people in the cities, because they don't have the luxury like we probably all do, which is we have our own offices at home and what have you. We can very easily continue to work from home. But for younger people, that's not the same. So I think you're going to see the split. And I think what's challenging now is going back to the buildings aspect, is you had a lot of people and not enough building space. Now you've got a lot of building space and not enough people to put in them. And so now if you get into the, what our company's going to do, first of all, and I love Dr. Mansour, what you said with regards to, the comfort and everything else and how well you've managed in Dubai. But I also think you're going to find that people say, I want fresh air. And as soon as they realize that the standard is 20% fresh air in the building is the minimum standard, they're going to go, I don't know whether I'm comfortable with that. So you're going to get this balance now, which is why you have to know exactly the number of people that are in your building, count them all the time where they are in real time, to then adjust accordingly, because fresh air is really expensive. So I actually see some of the things happening here where they're saying, oh, we'll just turn 100% fresh air. And it's like, wow, we've just doubled our energy costs overnight. So you've got to be very smart how you fill the building, and then how you distribute things, because the user will demand that fresh air and they'll demand that you drive them out of the room if the air is not fresh enough in there, because they realize, especially in conference rooms, those are potentially the areas where they are most dangerous. So if you can connect the building to what's happening with the people aspects of that inside the building and interconnect those two, then you have the ability to make it as energy efficient as possible, with realization it may cost you more energy because 20% fresh air may not be acceptable.
Yep, I understand. Okay, I'm going to take some questions from our chat, and I encourage everyone listening to submit questions. We've only got a small number at the moment, so please, any questions you have for the panel members, please type them in there. This one's for you, George. Has there been a positive impact from the current pandemic in the way that companies are approaching the running of their buildings? What have you seen changing in your region in recent times?
Yeah, I think, Deborah, I want to build on my fellow panelists around some of the dynamics that we have seen. Certainly, there's a new normal that is now in place, and what historically was probably taken for granted, that you'd walk into an office and then everything is there, and sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's hot, You engage in small rooms, big rooms, so on. All these dynamics, you actually walk into the office, you take the door handle and you push it, right? Or you use common facilities in a building or in a mall or anywhere else. These basic fundamentals of how an operator or an occupant has been engaging with the building around them has changed, and quite a bit. And I think, these kind of periods always teach us how to be more innovative, but also how to think outside the box and look at, how do we actually address a challenge? When you're faced with challenge, this is when innovation comes to light. And the period has been filled with innovation, and I think for a company that runs 10 million buildings around the world, I think we learned a lot, and we learned a lot from the software that we've been deploying, from the systems that we've been deploying, and now we're actually, we pivoted quite fast to be able to look at the comfort and the kind of post-COVID new normal, ensuring not only you have fresh air and it's there at the right level, but ensure you also have clean air that is fresh coming in, right? And how do you actually measure the social distancing or even the frictionless access, or you need to limit the number of people within a certain floor plan? It's going to be totally different to fundamentals that we always used to live. And I would say the technology is definitely
about healthy buildings. Is that what you're referring to when you're saying about the fresh air and the keeping the distance?
Correct. And I think the pivot into healthy building and what we've been able to leverage in terms of experience and technology, be it on the hardware or the software side, has just kind of put us there to make sure that as people return to work or even to engage in the various aspects, be it a stadium when you're watching a game, that should be healthy, and you need to do the count there, or an airport or educational facility or even any other facility from healthcare to any other. So we're looking at all this, and I think from a technology perspective, historically, we had a problem where you had a number of systems that were not talking to each other. So you almost had a nervous system that is not connected. And I think what happened in the last couple of years is we were able to build a platform that brings it all together and add AI and add historical data and norms. And now what we're doing is we're actually pivoting that to the next level, is to make sure we're detailed into the operation of occupants in the building and make sure that their safety is important while you're achieving business continuity and operational savings.
Great.
I might add a point here, Deborah, if I may.
Definitely.
I believe, just continuing with the fellow panelists here, I think one of the good examples I can share with the audience and with the panelists as well of practices is the trial of implementation of Honeywell Forge solution, and to enhance the energy efficiency within our university's existing building management system. It has demonstrated its potential to reduce energy consumption with lesser complaints of excessive cooling. I know that I'm from a geography right now. We have just outside is around 45 degrees Celsius, and with a 95% of humidity. So just imagine that you are in a nice sauna, and that excessive cooling sometime will become kind of a complaint rather than to be the heat. The other side of the heat will be a complaint. Right. So I think dynamic maintenance approaches and utilizing the power of artificial intelligence and to monitor and control comfort and energy efficiency levels of the building. The second point I would like to make, I don't think that when we come to the building and business continuity, we have to think about silo mindsets in terms of the companies. Our organization was totally aligned with the federal level of the government alignment of the energy saving, as well as on the city, like Dubai. So this initiative of our using our partnership with Honeywell was in line with the Dubai Clean Energy Strategy 2050, and which aims to transform the Emirate of Dubai into a hub of green and energy and economy. And not only that, but even the United Arab Emirates, the UAE Energy Strategy 2050, focused on improving energy efficiency for both individuals and companies by 40% by 2050. We are also proud, the third point I would like to make, we are also proud of our cooperation with Honeywell to launch the first free economic and creative free zones in the UAE in support of the goals of Dubai Free University Zones Strategy. And this initiative has actually been launched by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Vice President, the Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai, and which was launched to enable the effective partnership between universities and companies as they together develop the skills of future generations of business leaders. Because I think that is something that we are currently even working with Honeywell to develop.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's some great examples there. I'm going to take another couple of questions from the chat here. How can the cost be optimized for the current situation? I'm going to answer that one because I've seen some really interesting things in the last couple of weeks, which is customers that we have from Honeywell are starting to realize what they already have and how to better use it. And that's one very obvious way to cost optimize, is to leverage the assets that you already have. But we've seen a lot of feedback from customers around, oh, how do I operate my building remotely? And how do I change my building schedules to accommodate the fact that I don't have a full workforce coming in anymore? And of course, most existing systems already allow a lot of that cost optimization and management to happen. It's just customers have never bothered to really understand how to use it before, or have never needed to use it. They haven't had the impetus to change a lot of their operating parameters and use the investments they've already made to really optimize their day-to-day processes with how they manage their buildings. And I'm sure the same applies to many other tools and technologies that people have invested in. So a key takeaway for a lot of people, a lot of customers, is look at what you already have and look at whether you can operate it better. Are you really using the full potential of a lot of the things that you already have?
And I think, Deborah, one of the things on that in particular that we've seen a lot of, which started off originally, funny enough, just on the WebEx side and on the I need to work from home, and companies weren't prepared to get people to work from home securely. So we saw a massive uptake in our VPN solutions and what have you. And then it instantaneously, literally within a few weeks, it transformed to buildings. Because suddenly it was like, I've separated my building network separate from my IT network because I'm not confident that my building network and my building management partner knows how to secure that, to connect them there and never put that security. And now they're like, oh, now I need to connect it to the outside world as well. How do I do that securely? So we saw both sides of that. One was, just connect into it any which way, which isn't so obviously that leaves just a big security mess. And the other one was, how can we make sure that our buildings are connected securely, like we've now made our employees be able to do video and everything else securely as well. But let's make sure that we can do that from a building aspect. And I think that ties into that. It's like most of the pieces are there, but they just haven't interconnected them. And I think now it's more important than anything to do those interconnections. But as soon as you do that, you got to make sure that the security is there as well.
Absolutely. Another question from our chat. Is solar power being used a lot in the Middle East for building operations to make it more sustainable? Maybe, George, you could comment on that.
I'll try to comment, but I also would ask Dr. Mansour to give me his perspective and experience, especially from Hamdan University. Look, I mean, certainly in a place where you have the highest number of hours and you have direct sunlight in the region here, there is solar has been adopted quite fastly. And I would say, I mean, if you look here in the UAE, there has been some pioneering pioneering in projects around solar power, be it in Dubai or in the Abu Dhabi states, and it has been kind of leveraging all the technologies, and I think some of them actually brought in new technologies around centralized steam power with solar power that brings some high efficiency. Certainly it's there, and it's leveraged in certain buildings. A lot of the petrol stations, for example, have all their rooftops with panels, many of the buildings and rooftops, and I think it's getting more and more adoption, and it's certainly part of the renewable energy target for the United Arab Emirates and many of the states in the neighborhood. And then, Dr. Mansour, if you want to add anything to it.
I do agree, George, about what is happening here in the United Arab Emirates. But when we talk about the Middle East region overall, I think the first barrier actually in the past years were the culture itself, because it's a traditional approach to how to run organizations, how to run buildings. It's technology, how to be able to maintain that. And I think what COVID-19 has done in the whole region, I think it was a kind of a disruption of people being using this thing. So I think now people are going to be believing more in the use of technology and artificial intelligence and how they manage their buildings. And not only this, but also just look up the maintenance of huge buildings and a huge number of workers who are just residing into the facilities to be able to look after the bits and pieces of the building itself. So we have been through that since 2018. We have seen it, we have lived it, we have witnessed it. We went through an experience of how to be able to address the mindset of our staff, the mindset of our faculty, the mindset of people that they are around us. So I think the culture has changed considerably by COVID-19. That is why, by all means, it's a joke, but I think a statue of Corona is fundamental, I think, in the world, because it changed the way that we, for a long time, people were talking about it, but I think now they realize that it is a must to go, and the use of technology will become much more innovative.
Great. Yep, I think the Middle East is often leading the way in some of these innovative technologies. And on that same subject, there's a question here in the chat box around for you, Dr. Mansour. Thank you for always appreciate your vision, and you're always a thought leader in the country. As you mentioned, the Hamdan University graduates are really entrepreneurs rather than job seekers. What did you do in terms of the curriculum to encourage that mindset to be created in the students who attended your university?
I think having that particular approach to the learning, we intend to focus on our learning outcomes to be competency-based rather than a usual traditional way of getting those things. I will give you just only one example that it will elaborate how much we have done. We have a program in master's degree called Change and Innovation Management. We have graduated almost around 15 cohorts. Out of those 15 cohorts, all over the last 12 to 13 years, we have come across almost 79 UAE nationals. Those are coming from middle-class families whom their parents cannot provide them enough financing for their businesses. In the first year of their study, they introduced a trade license for themselves. 2 years after graduation, they all quitted the government job. They were all government employees. They all quitted that job. The least person on the list of 79, those are actually, their turnover is almost around $6 million a year. Wow. And the highest is almost around $120 million a year. So I think those are coming not because of their families be supporting them, because they are coming all from middle-class families. What they had in common, that they were in this course. So we'll be able to transform those type of mindsets. Now, believe me, in next October, we are going to launch the first venture capital for the university, in the region. Because venture capital, I mean, you know it. I mean, there was in the big universities and giants around the world. But believe me that out of those 79, those people are going to put their own, I mean, the first money into the venture capital because they would like to see their, I mean, procedures coming over to take that particular money and to put it into their future. So I think that the commitment that the people had, it doesn't come from nothing, but because they have been the learning outcomes of such courses and such a program would help them to be able to transform the mindset rather to become job seeker. And you know, Deborah, in this part of the world, the people significantly depend on government jobs. And that is exactly what we have done in the beginning. We are going to graduate entrepreneurs. And I think as much as we can graduate those individuals, the business will thrive, the whole education system.
Can I build on that? Because I think there's another aspect there that I'd like to understand, which is obviously the university, and I know the Middle East in general, has a very young population that are participating. What do you see, how are the young people's expectations changing, or how are they changing the way you deliver services, both educational services and other services and employment opportunities, in the case of Honeywell and Cisco? How are they changing because of the changing expectations of that young generation, much more tech savvy, mobile phones in their hands all the time? Dr. Mansour, maybe you could lead a quick comment on that.
I think also, Deborah, the COVID-19 had an impact on the way that people would think, because people usually were in this geography where I live is just looking into one job at a time. But now people are much more vulnerable because we're going to go to multitasking. Because once they have gone remote, you don't belong to a building anymore. So what it counts is your mindset. What counts is your brain. And I've always been saying that your brain and your mind is like a parachute. They won't function unless they are open. And I think COVID-19 has opened up all the mindsets in the region and the worldwide, not just only in this region. So I think the new generation who are coming actually will be multitasking, not loyal to one company. They do, and they build on their talents. And I think that is where the universities and the higher education should move. And I think I've always been a great believer, Deborah, by those morals. I think I've always been saying in 2003, I said, shopping is essential. Shopping malls, not anymore. And that was in 2003.
Yeah.
Banking is essential. Banks as a brick and mortar, not anymore. Yeah. Likewise, schooling is essential. Schools are not. Learning is essential. Universities are not. So I think in that is the direction to the future after COVID-19.
Fantastic.
I also think, just from that point in particular, it's like the young generation, they want to work when they want to work and where they want to work. So, and I think you'll find a mix. So back to the earlier question is I think buildings are so important, because otherwise what you have talent that feels alone and independent and will jump even more quickly from job to job to job. So you're going to see companies, they're going to say, if you want to work at home, that's fine. But if you want to come in 2 or 3 days a week into a beautiful office space that's clean, healthy, and safe, then you can do that as well and have that mixed together, as long as you can connect them together and they can collaborate effectively both at home and then back in the office.
Not only this, but I think the university's buildings will become kind of a community centers. Right. Exactly. Because they just come to it and to have more innovative ideas through discussions and through having a kind of a human touch, if I would say. So that's where it's going to go.
So there's a question here, will we need so many buildings going forward? And maybe the answer is no, and they'll be different. You'll still need some, but they'll be different. Instead of being a classroom, they'll be a collaboration center, or instead of being an office space, there'll be a meeting and entertainment complex. What do you say to that?
I mean, I can jump into it. It's certainly, it's obviously a generational gap, but that's one aspect to it. But the second aspect is even people that are in their third decade of working and they got used to working from offices, they're now requesting change to the office environment. So even the existing workers, let alone the future generation and the up and coming workers that are going to go into buildings, they're going to dictate more and more change. But even our generation have now really accepted change, and always COVID has pushed this change to happen faster. And how we collaborate and how we work, I mean, this is becoming important. I think buildings will always be there. You always want to have an environment to be there to engage, right? Now, would you repurpose how it is designed? Would you repurpose what you achieve within the building, the goal of working from a building? All of these are going to come more and more into question. And I think it has been proven that you certainly can work from anywhere, your house or anywhere else, or in a collaborative environment. Certainly you would want to have venues to bring people together in a healthy way where it's safe, and it will change the way we used to operate and we used to work.
Absolutely. Okay, let me see if there's any other questions that we haven't answered. There's one specifically about Honeywell Energy Manager. I can answer that one. That's Honeywell Energy Manager is a product that we've successfully used for many years to monitor and manage energy. That is being, I guess, the next generation of Honeywell Energy Manager is the solution that we used at the Hamdan University. And so there is a new generation of technology that will be cloud-based, machine learning-based, that will be the upgrade path for the existing Honeywell Energy Manager solutions that people may be aware of. So that's that question. And there was one here about, is there a platform available to share best practices? I think that's a question to you, Dr. Masood, around how does your university communicate what you're doing to the external world?
I think, Deborah, again, I go back to the university's economical innovation free zones that we are intending to launch very, very shortly. That will become kind of a platform under which people can be able to share best practices. Yes. And I think it's by doing this, it's we have something called Cloud Campus. So through that particular platform, which will be the free zone under which people can jump in, can have ideas to be shared. I think that's the only way to be able to conduct such a thing. And I think also, in addition to that, I think it is time for companies today, because of the rapid change which is happening in the world, we need to be very much near our younger generations, because those people having the mindset, what the future looks like. I was in 2009, I give you an example. In 2009, I asked my younger son, he was at that time at grade 9 in the school, and I was supposed to go to lecture for the future schools. And I asked him clearly, son, what do you, anticipate, how we will be able to see the future of schools? He said, Dad, am I allowed to talk? I said, yes, democracy is allowed. And he said, yes. He said, Dad, I don't want to go to school. I said, oops, how am I going to learn? He said, very easy. Get me a robot in my room. I said, okay, if I get a robot to learn, how are we going to be able to mingle with people, for God's sake? I said, Dad, I'm sending you to school from 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. And do you know how many people I'm mingling with, actually? I said, okay, you are a boys section. How many sections you are in grade 9? He said, 4. I said, I'm to 25, so you are almost 100. He said, no, Dad, I have other 100 friends as well from other classes. He said, look, Dad, for more than 8 hours, you are sending me there by paying money. I am mingling only with 200. When I come back home, I just go with the social media. I have almost 2,500. So you tell me that from which one is socializing more? I kept my mouth shut, because that's where the new generation thinking is. We sometimes anticipate that we know what is the best for them. I think the companies should be doing this, and I think the Honeywell relationship with Hamdan Mohammed Smart University will get a lot of benefit for young generations out of the schools in terms of the research, in terms of the mindset, and the ideas to go forward.
Absolutely agree with you, and I've seen the same with my children as well. Yeah, they are interacting with their friends and family in a completely different way to the way we think of it. Unfortunately, I think we're out of time now, so I'd just like to take the last minute here to thank all of our panelists for very much for your contributions today. And just a couple of takeaways, I think. My takeaways from this session is, the COVID-19 crisis has created a bit of a discontinuity in the way we have been operating, which has forced us to get out of our comfort zone and try new technologies, new ways of working. It's proven out some things. It's probably challenged us in other ways. And I think we'll come back to this. We know that buildings themselves will survive, but probably in quite different ways and are being utilised in quite different ways in future to how they're utilised today. And we're all on that journey of digital transformation in how we're going to change the way we use buildings to achieve those different outcomes in the future. So thanks again to all our panelists, and thanks to all our attendees, and we'll leave the presentation there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.